Now, senses. Knowledge and understanding of the world is what you thought of as science and history and geography. It's the world around them, it's what's important to them. We are going for a blindfold walk in the woods. We're going to set up an optician's shop. If anybody's got any old glasses we can poke the lenses out of, it was quite nice. My dad must have about 10 pairs actually if I go around and hunt at home. They did the household sounds game yesterday with Danielle. They went down in tiny little groups and had to say what the sound was that they heard. Stories on tape. We're going on the sound walk this afternoon. When we do tastes, we're going to make some things, cook, so that we've got some stuff to taste. They had tiny little pots yesterday with orange and mint and another really obvious one, and rose was the other one. They had to sniff the essence, and obviously the mint and the orange was really easy, and the others, even I was like, I don't know what this is, because Danielle had set it up. The lives of Louis Braille and Helen Keller. I've already asked Gareth if he'll bring the Derwell in. Some of you know Derwell, the hearing dog. So he'll be coming in a couple of weeks, and Gareth will give the children a talk about how useful they are to people who are deaf. And I'm doing some geography about where they live. We'll be talking about their addresses. I think it's really important that they know where. The language, clarity when speaking to the group. Now some children are very, very confident, some children aren't confident at all, but everybody has spoken in circle time already, which is really good. Listening skills. Now, story time and circle time are a really useful time for them to sit and listen. We do our version of the pause that goes through the school where you're ready to look and listen and not shout out and think and concentrate. And hopefully by then they'll be in the zone and they're ready to think. We're developing their independent writing. Now, in year 1 and 2, it's where they make the massive leap in their ability to read and write by themselves. We have, at the moment, children who can spell 300 words independently, no problem, can write beautifully, can leave gaps between each word, more or less always remember full stops and capital letters, and we have children who aren't quite sure of all the sounds. Okay? Do not worry, wherever your child is on this spectrum, by the end of this year, they will be massively further ahead than they are now. It's a really important thing to remember. Your child is where they are now, and your child will be further on at Christmas. They're writing their own targets this morning. I can't wait to see them. I told them all to think of a personal one as well. Now, we worked out the other day that we can count to 10 in 7 languages in my class. So some children have an awful lot of learning English to do, but it's fantastic. And then we went through all these languages that everybody can speak, and then everyone went, oh, and sign language. I thought, yeah, exactly. We've got so much richness from their language skills. Don't panic if your child has been taught in another language until now, because they will very quickly catch up. We develop their fine motor skills. If you see them holding a pencil like this, or both, try and correct it. We do lots of cutting out. I gave them the cutting out challenge the other day. They had to cut out a circle, a square and a rectangle. And they all went, yeah, no problem. Again, like the writing, some of them couldn't hold the scissors, some of them went, there you go, no messing. Some of them went, oh, the circle's really tricky. Some of them couldn't do the triangle. They're at great differing stages of development. Now this is where Lego and stuff like that is really useful, because it's little tiny bits. You know, you might not think that Play-Doh is good for their fine motor skills. Can they make tiny little balls? Can they make bigger ones? Anything that uses their hands in a fine way is good. That's why we've got tongs and wooden blocks, and we used to have competitions to see who can make the highest tower of the wooden blocks, because it gets them using their fingers. So if your child finds it really tricky to write letters and things like that, and you think, oh, blimey, do stuff that makes them use the fine motor skills. Don't sit them at the table for an hour writing them, because that's just counterproductive as well. Independent reading skills I've talked a little bit about already. We also do lots of group reading. I use the big screen and get books on the big screen that they can all read together, so that older ones can help the younger ones, the good readers can help the others. We did this the other day. I gave them all books and put them in obvious pairs that worked well together. There is a list of the stories we'll be using, things like A Quiet Night In, because it gets them to listen. Peace at Last, fantastic story, you know, with the elephants. And they go out in the garden and there's loads and loads of different noises, and Dad Bear can't sleep, and then it's morning and the alarm clock goes and he hasn't slept at all, but you know, that kind of story we'll be using. Stories that are very familiar. Little Bear Lost, where they have to go hunting for the bear, and he's things like The Train Ride, though, is a big book. and it goes through countryside and through cities and things, and you'll get them to talk about that kind of travelling. The Gingerbread Man, old stories that we all know really well, but that encourage their sequencing skills. You know, can they tell them the story? It's not all about writing it down. Some children, you'll tell them a story and they'll start at the end and work back. Some children remember little bits. Some children will tell you and use dialogue. Some children use great descriptive words. That's what we're encouraging them to start to do, but again, they're all at very different levels. So, sequencing stories, writing stories, and retelling stories. Retelling stories is a really, really important part of their development. Don't stop reading books to your children just because you think, oh, they've started to read themselves now. There aren't many original stories. It's very hard to think of one that hasn't been thought of before, so the more you read to them, the better their writing as they get older will become. We talk about rhyming words and poetry. To be able to hear rhyming words is a really good skill. It develops their listening skills as well, so that's something you could do when you're popping along in the car. And descriptive language, especially with the older ones. I use the word adjective, you may as well from the start. Okay, thinking about how they can describe different things. We're going up into the woods this afternoon on a sound walk to hear, hopefully, hear lots and lots of different things. I might have to go right up to hear the road. And I want them to describe what they can hear, not just tell me, oh, there's a bird up there. That kind of thing, developing their use of language. Year 1, I'll start with to know the number names, to recite the numbers, to order numbers to at least 20, to count carefully 20 objects, put them in rows, to know that if you've got a bit of order it's much easier than having everything all in a jumble. Yesterday we partitioned teen numbers. I've really, really stressed with all of them the difference between 19 and 90. You always know if you count with a class and you're counting in tens and you get to 90 and the next one they say is 20, that they've not been saying it quite right and they need to listen carefully. So I show them, I draw rods and little units to show them what 19 was, and then 90 was all these rods. We started with year 1. To solve addition and subtraction problems. Again, they're at massively different levels. Some children still need counters and then put them 2 sets together and count the counters. Some children can use their fingers. Some children, you develop then into putting the first number in your head and adding on. So 6 and 3 is 6, 7, 8, 9. That's how you do it. Then children also are using mental maths because they just know that 6 and 4 is 10. The pairs of numbers that add up to make 10 are really useful today.
Number bonds.
Thank you. There's enough teachers here, somebody on there. Number bonds to 10 are really useful to go over as well, so that they just know that 8 and 2 is 10, 7 and 3 is 10, and they know that the inverse of that is the same as well, so 3 and 7 is 10 as well. Introducing the plus and the minus and the equal signs, and I do it like this, so that they can write number sentences, so 6 plus 3 equals. It helps them to have a visual thing when they first start writing some. You don't write them in columns like we used to, you write them horizontally to start with. Finding totals using money. Money's really hard. You give them a 2 pence and 3 ones and they go 1, 2, 3, 4. Teaching them to go 1, 2 on the 2 pence coin, and then each one is something that you can do at home. Measuring length, using metres now, you want metre sticks out, comparing 2 different lengths. But in year 1 we really literally are talking about longer and shorter and the vocabulary of maths, rather than of measuring and weighing and things, heavier and lighter, rather than grams and stones and pounds. It's hard to leave those behind if you're my age. 2D shapes, recognising and describing. Tell me about a 3D shape, that's a cube, what can you tell me about it? Using this, it's got 6 faces, each face is flat. How many chords has it got? Things like that. Year 2, knowing number names, recognising them and counting to 100 at least. Counting 100 objects, now it sounds bonkers, but can you put them in tens and then count in tens? We've done an awful lot as a class so far, counting in 5s, counting in 2s, counting in tens to 100. Because they do it as a whole class, it doesn't matter if you can't quite catch up with the rest. They're not shown as being the ones, I can't do that. And they very quickly pick it up. Reading and writing numbers to at least 50 in figures and words. Now, 18, they put the 8 first, a lot of them. sound, you hear that first. 19, they write like 91. Don't worry about reverse numbers in this class so much. It's always 3 and 7 and 9, always. Sometimes it's 2, I don't know how they do that wrong. So don't panic if they reverse their numbers, they grow out of it. No adults, you know, reverse their numbers. So it does become a thing that they can see. To know what each digit in a 2-digit number means, so that 32 is 3 tens, we get the rods out and the unit little blocks. To solve addition and subtraction problems, now we've moved on from having to have counters. Some of them are still using their fingers. Hopefully all of them, when I've reminded them for a couple of weeks, will put the first number in their head and use their fingers. But if you can add 3 or 4 to a number, you can add 3 or 4 to 37. It doesn't have to be a little number then. Once you've got the skill, they like it, but they can use big numbers instead. I'll be teaching them tricks about how to add on 9 and 11 by adding or taking away 10, and then adding 1 or taking away. I split them for maths, not necessarily in year groups, but we use the little room downstairs. It makes for a much better lesson that we can use the big board and get some peace and quiet in year 2 and learn all these kinds of things. Choosing the appropriate number operation, right, to solve this, do you need to add up, do you need to take away? It's moved far more from when we were in school, where there'd be sums on the board and you just had to solve them, to getting the children to use the maths knowledge they've got to solve questions. Finding totals using money, solving problems using money. If each balloon costs 10 pence and you buy 4, how much does it cost? That kind of thing. Then moving on to, you had 50p, you bought the 4 balloons, how much change do you get? Measuring length using meters again. Time moves gradually from morning, evening, daytime, lunchtime, playtime, home time, they like those ones, to o'clock, half past, quarter past, quarter to. But it moves gradually, Anna, don't worry. I can see the look on your face. If they can say that it's next going to be playtime, and then it's lunchtime, if they can sequence the day from the morning to when they go to bed, that's the start. If they can say the days of the week in order, then we move on to the months of the year. It's all progression, slowly, steps of progression.